View from the Gutters, episode 121. Welcome to View from the Gutters, the comic book podcast where each episode we discuss a collected edition, trade paperback, or graphic novel, and then recommend and vote on the book for the next episode. Warning: the discussion portion of this show has massive spoilers for that book. On this episode, we discuss Velvet, and to skip ahead to the recommendation section, skip to 5339.
Did you see the DB7 in the beginning?
Oh, wow. Yes, I did.
DB7?
The Aston Martin DB7.
James Bond car.
Of course, a car.
It's James Bond's special love car.
Okay. Well, welcome to View from the Gutters.
That could be a band name.
Episode 121.
I don't even fucking remember what I said. That's how fucking my day has been. James Bond's
Love car.
love car. Okay, cool. James Bond's like, yeah, that could be a band name.
Welcome to View from the Gutters, episode 121. I'm Tobiah Panshin.
I'm Joe Preti.
Brant Gillihan-Eddy.
I'm Kayleigh Fleeman.
And I'm Cade Reynolds.
And Andrew Chard has the night off, so I am running
Actually,
the mics.
he doesn't have the night off, so you're running the mic.
Yes, he was called into work, so I am in full control of this situation, and no one will countermand me or fuck with my shit.
Yep.
This is immediately when the elevator music should start playing, as there's a long absence of anyone talking after Tobias said that.
I think I was just watching, one of the websites I go to was doing like the top 10 Dana Carvey skits from his tenure on Saturday Night Live.
Oh my goodness.
The McLaughlin group, where he just asks somebody this really like weird esoteric question and they start talking and he's like, wrong, next, and then he says somebody else's name. I think you should do that all night long.
No, I disagree.
I immediately regret the decision to be in charge of things. 3 brief announcements before we get started.
Wrong, Kayleigh Fleeman, how do you feel?
God damn it, Joe. You picked the mic twice, and we have not even gone a minute.
I'm ready to go today.
Chard is going to beat me.
Good. Not me.
This is not a disincentive for causing trouble.
So announcement number 1.
Toby gets it.
It's hot in here, so we've opened the window. And if there are bird noises or random sirens or whatever, we apologize.
Yeah.
Announcement number 2, thank you to our Patreon episode sponsors, Brandon Hill, Tony Cortero, and Addison Appleby. Announcement number 3, we are going to be at the Olympia Comics Festival on June 6th, doing a panel at 2 p.m. You should come and check us out if you're in the Olympia area.
Will this episode go up in time for them to get the
No,
announcement?
that will actually go up after the fact.
Oh, good.
Ignore that
Are you
last
reading the board?
Jump into your time machine, go back to last weekend.
Excellent.
Chard, cut this part out.
He won't.
No, he won't.
So we should just stop talking about it.
All right.
No, I want to
Announcement's
talk
over.
about it, how great it was. I've come
No,
from
that
the future.
no, that's going to make it even weirder.
I've come from the future to tell you that it was really great to do that whole thing, and I'm glad everybody that came out.
Yes, a good time was had by all.
It was amazing. Don't pretend like you're from the future too.
I was glad it was sunny.
I am from the double future.
I am no. You're from a dead time. You're from a time loop.
A doomed timeline?
A doomed timeline. Yes.
No, that's not a real thing.
You don't tell me what's real.
Okay.
So, Brant, we're talking about Velvet, and you pitched this book.
I did.
So would you like to begin our conversation?
Spies are great.
Are they?
Yes. Spies are amazing. Spies are fantastic. So I love spies. I love spies all the time. And I forget about how much I love spies sometimes because I get caught up in other stuff. And then I start doing things that let me see spies. And then I'm like, I love spies. I love spies. I'm in a very spy-centric move because I finally found a cheap copy of Splinter Cell Blacklist for my PlayStation 3. So I've been reading spy comics and playing spy games and reading about people kicking the crap out of people and then pretending to be people kicking the crap out of people. And so all I have to say is spies are awesome.
I think the only way that could have been more perfect is if you had your laptop playing the movie Spy games while you were doing those things.
While thumbing through an issue of Spy versus Spy.
Yeah.
So on a decibel meter, where 0 is pirates Where are spies?
Oh, well, no. Sorry. I reject out of hand your attempt to place pirates below spies on some sort of scale.
No. They can be above or below. That's why it's balanced.
Okay, I see.
He's talking about a spectrum wherein pirates are in the middle.
Yes, we've calibrated our scale to pirates.
Yes, because of my intense love of pirates.
Indeed.
They exist in a phased realm right above them.
I see.
Why? What about pirates that are also spies?
You know, if we could get pirate spy superheroes going, I
mean,
pretty much would probably cease to exist.
Why has nobody made a pirate story?
Pirates.
There
That's like
are
every
some in
steampunk
novels.
Yeah,
Is
it's like
that-
every steampunk novel ever. Pirate spies.
Yeah.
What
Is
are
that not
novels?
the Bruce Campbell TV show Jack of Trades?
I was kind of I
Maybe.
I don't
Because I remember he was a pirate spy.
he was a privateer though, wasn't he?
Well, I mean, privateers, they're within the
spy-reteer?
same relative spy-reteer. Better than a pry, probably.
Privateers were licensed though, weren't they? Like pirates
Right.
weren't.
Yes, they had
Yeah.
marks.
Yeah.
But at least for me personally, I'm not going to speak for all other pirate lovers. It's really the whole swashbuckling sailing thing, which is why, as I gesture my thumb at Kayleigh, who can't see me because she's blocked by a box, I don't necessarily buy the steampunk thing, because steampunk for me is not what I love about pirates and privateers and stuff, because it's the boats on a water thing that I particularly love, and steampunk tends to add things like steam power and not sails and sky and other things.
But airships, though.
Yeah, airships are cool. Don't get me wrong, but they're not what I love about pirates.
No
Do
sky
you-
pirates for
Quick
you?
question before we completely devolve
Skyrates?
into a discussion of pirates. How do you feel about the movie Treasure Planet?
I feel mildly tepid.
That's fair.
It's a great movie.
And
Anyway.
Is it
no?
though?
Yeah, I
It
mean,
is.
you
I'm
know.
gonna make you watch it just because of the
I've
face
seen
that
it.
you made. Well,
I
you're
saw
gonna
it
have
in
to
the
watch
theater.
it again.
I actually haven't seen it. I can't back that up.
I mean, it's not too
I always
bad.
confuse
I
it
like
with Titan AE.
They're
Which is a
different.
mediocre movie.
So,
Oh.
what if Peter Parker was a spy and he didn't have to change his name because his name is already Spider-Man?
So what did we think about?
So anyway,
That's why we differentiate Spider-Man and Speederman.
Well, Speederman is our patron saint.
damn
here
it, Cade,
at
you kept
View
this
from the
going.
Gutters.
We were so close to just ignoring this topic entirely. So anyway, back to the original question. I pitched Velvet. I had not read it before I pitched it, actually, truth be told. I was taking it on the
Against the rules.
No, it's not.
No, it's not. I do it all
What
the
planet
time.
is it against the rules?
No, you just always break the rules because we have no enforcement mechanism.
That may be true too, but yeah, I had taken it on the good word of various whispers around the cosmos that I trust that it was a decent book, and I really enjoyed it. I mean, actually, at the end of the day, when I walked away from the end of Volume 2, I was like, when does Volume 3 come out? When can I finish, or at least get further in than I am? And I was disappointed to discover that it will take quite a bit of time to get farther along. I mean, not monthlies are coming out still, but it makes me sad when I love a story as much as I was enjoying this. And of course, the only thing that I really walked away with any kind of like nitpicky, like this is something I wish was done slightly better, was one minor thing about the art, which we can get to at some other point.
Well, I don't want to utterly derail the conversation if other people want to jump in, but I did have a few nits that I wanted to pick about this.
Yeah. Come on.
I don't believe it. You're always so accepting and magnanimous.
Yes. I'm just a joy to work with in every regard because I never have a cruel word for anyone.
Nope.
I'm just looking around the room because I didn't find any flaws in this.
No, I found myself really liking this book despite myself. Like, I was reading it and I'm like, this upsets me. I don't like this. I don't like this. I'm bothered by this. And yet I managed to sail through this book in record time because I just couldn't stop turning the pages because it was an incredibly compelling spy work. It was a really good, action-packed, fun book with lots of cool action scenes and a lot of fun stuff in it. And yet, I was struck by the similarities I feel between this character and other tough-as-nails, hard-ass female characters. And I feel like a propensity among a certain type of writer to substitute being a badass who outfights and outfucks everyone in the room for actually having depth of character. And I felt that with Velvet, that she's presented as this character who has screwed every agent on the force, who, has sex with people just to get whatever she wants. And it's not that so much as the way that it's depicted, where we're getting, quite a bit of nudity of this character on the page. And the fact that she is somebody who has been sitting behind a desk for 20 years and then immediately turns around and is the biggest badass in every single room that she walks into, who magically has the body of a 20-something despite being in her 40s.
Kayleigh, go. Go, Kayleigh, go.
Me, but Kayleigh is...
Kayleigh, attack!
Sorry.
Yes, you are
so
vibrating in your chair. How am I wrong?
Maybe
Please.
my Red Bull has finally kicked in. So I don't feel like she is just this substitute for a well-written character that just outfucks and outfights everybody in the room. I feel like she is a character with depth, and she is a character who has very strong motivation. She has very strong characteristics, and she is written in a way that she has to lie to herself and to everyone else, so you don't, as a reader, get to see who she is, because she doesn't get to see who she is, because she denies herself that.
Also, she does make mistakes. She's not badass right out of the box.
Yeah, she, to say that she's, she's not really in fighting form. Like, she has to wear a special suit that keeps basically everything in, because she has referenced multiple times where, if I had fallen like that, if I had made that mistake and I wasn't wearing this suit, all of my bones would be broken right now.
Well, and also you see her training. There's a specific scene,
right? There's in the beginning of the book before anything happens, where it's clear that she still maintains a physical regimen.
Yeah, so she hasn't just been sitting behind a desk for 15 years.
Donuts are amazing.
Yeah, scarfing down donuts and drinking coffee, and she keeps herself and I think that's the whole point of the book. I think kind of is once an agent, always an agent. I think that's. And
that's fair. And I was actually talking about this with Kayleigh earlier today, that my problem is not so much with this one particular incarnation in isolation, because there's always a justification. It's that this is a trope that we see repeatedly, and this is a problem that I had with the Rucka one, where
Lazarus.
Yes, with Lazarus, that repeatedly we see this motif of the woman who is she's just this, big tough as nails badass, and we substitute this for character depth.
Well, but I think the thing is that I got a couple different things that I want to tackle here.
Aren't emotional problems character depth?
Yeah.
Yes, but again, it's not the individual instance; it's the repetition of the form.
Well, because Lazarus,
it's emotion.
Well, but yeah. I think this is the thing that gets really difficult. Is that I think in both this case with Brubaker and in the Lazarus case with Ruck, and I like to think I said this at the time, but I have no idea, is that the whole point is that I think they're specifically playing to that trope to kind of deconstruct it and approach it from a slightly different angle. And I think this is especially true in Velvet, because the whole point is that basically, I think there's a couple of different things that he's doing relatively well, is that A, he's completely using the classic James Bond trope in the form of a woman. Why is it bad that James Bond fucks a bunch of ladies and does all that stuff? She does the same thing.
Right. Except she's not James Bond. She's Moneypenny.
Yeah, except she's not. That's the whole point. Is that you think she's Moneypenny, and it turns out, no, she actually is fucking James Bond.
Yeah, she's James Bond.
And she was fucking literally James Bond when he was James Bond.
Literally and figuratively fucking James Bond.
But this is the thing that I was impressed with, is it Epting who drew this?
Yes.
My brain just blanked.
Yes.
Was that there were definitely scenes in which you're right. We're seeing Velvet naked. We're seeing her even in moments that are sexual, but I didn't feel like she was particularly sexualized.
Yeah.
I felt like she was illustrated by having a relatively realistic proportion for her body. There's a point where she walks into the fetish lesbian bar in negligee, but at no point is she bending over to grab something. Her ass isn't pointed at the screen. It is very clearly that she is being drawn as someone who is dressed sexily in a sexy setting versus literally posturing for whoever's reading the book to be wow, that is so hot. hot.
Well,
She also does not have tits that would hurt her back.
Wow.
Well, that's true, but I feel like that she was sexualized by the camera at different points. After she fucks the attaché in Czechoslovakia, and we see her like squatting down naked, I feel like that was a fairly sexualized pose. And when she's meeting the guy at the carnival, and you see her in her like corset and stockings before she puts on the dress.
But I think that in both of those circumstances there was an attempt, and it may not be flawless, but I think the attempt was to be clear that she is using sex as a weapon. And yes, you can't deny that basically to a certain extent someone who's fit and in their negligee will be sexy almost no matter what they're doing. But I think that it's very clear to me, at least, that Epting could have done so much more in even those circumstances to gratuitously be like, look at this, guys, isn't that fucking sweet? Like,
sure.
Like, and I think that's the difference, is that I felt the art was kind of like, this is a camera. She's bending down in her negligee because she's grabbing something. It's not, and I think that's that thing that's hard to talk about, that difference between something can be sexy and still be handled in a non-sexualized
absolutely
manner.
And I want to emphasize the point that I'm making, which is not, oh my god, this is bad. It's, I noticed these things and still found myself really enjoying the book regardless of them.
And it can be both.
Well, yes, I understand.
I mean, like, and that's the thing. It's like, I was listening to one of the podcasts I listened to, and they were talking about objectification versus empowerment, right? And when you get into fictional characters, they were talking about a comic that somebody wrote explaining objectification, and it's like, who has the power, right? Mm-hmm. Like, who is the viewer? Who is put who in this situation, right? Mm-hmm. And so in real life, it's much easier to tell when objectification is happening than in fiction, because in fiction, what you have is a character that's being created and controlled by somebody.
Yeah, there's a camera there.
There is a camera there, and fictional characters cannot have agency by the technical definition of that, because they're being, of that word, because they're being created by somebody.
But they can have a fictional agency.
I'm getting done. No, they can't. They can't have agency. People make their own choices. Like, characters in fiction do not, by definition, have agency because they don't make their own choices. The idea, though, is they can be written as if they do. Okay. A character, Furiosa from Mad Max, is a great example of a character that feels like she has agency because she is given a persona, and she acts within the bounds of that persona for the entire film. At no point does she do something out of character in order to further the plot, which is a big problem. You have strong women, or women that are being presented as the SFC, right? The strong female character that throw away their life's work to fall in love with somebody, or that act very much outside of the persona they're given originally. And of course, I can't think of any.
There's a debate that's happening right now, and I don't even watch the show, but this hit my radar, about a certain character in The Walking Dead,
right? Who
apparently has been for many episodes an incredibly strong protagonist, capable, physically, able to defend herself. And there's literally a moment in the last episode when she dies, where it's basically she like throws her hands up and is like, I can't save myself. And people are like, what the fuck are you talking about?
And that's exactly the kind of thing.
Now, there are other people who are saying, of course, no, there was a reason, there's this, and I mean, they're trying to contextualize it, but I'm just saying that that's an example that's in common.
I think that's an excellent example, because it really hit my radar, but I don't follow Walking Dead or anything. I think, though, that is a great example. If you're watching a show and a character does something that makes you go, what the fuck is that? That's a good example of, or that can be a good example of bad writing. Sometimes it can be an interesting device to further the plot. Sure. But, and this is what I was thinking. There was a part of me that had a problem with the few nude scenes that were in here. Were they gratuitous? Slightly. Were they tastefully done? Did I feel she was being objectified? Not in the way that I feel like something like Tarot Witch of the Black Rose is fucking objectified, or
Why
something.
Why must you bring up that book?
Well, because it's the most egregious example, so it sticks out in my head. Or something like Grimm Fairy Tales, like, I didn't feel like it was in that realm, but I also didn't feel like it was necessary. But I understand. I agree with Brant. I think it's playing with that trope of James Bond probably does not get dressed after he's just bedded the multinational traitorous, evil guy's assistant to rifle her through her safe. He's probably doing it naked.
Maybe he is in real life, but when we see James Bond on the screen, he's wearing briefs.
Oh no!
Yeah.
Because
okay,
we
I'm
normally
sorry.
See him afterwards.
David Craig. Daniel Craig. Sorry, thinking of the British.
Sorry to Daniel Craig.
Pop star.
We apologize.
Apologies.
I do not apologize.
There are clearly attempts, whether they're tongue in cheek or not, to completely sexualize that man in the
absolutely.
last few James Bond things. So yes, he does it in briefs, which, for all intents and purposes, in the popular vernacular, is about as close as you get to male negligee.
Sure. And the negligee bothered me less, but like in that first scene where she beds the assistant, if she had been in a bra and panties, I probably would have not given any shits.
Yeah. Well, and I'm sure that this so one of the things I'll say is that I think that what gets hard about this, the whole sexualization, objectification thing, and I'm sorry, gentlemen, but you don't have as strong as a voice in this as the ladies do when it comes to this, or at least of the female form, is it's all a continuum and a scale. There are women and there are people in general who have different levels of sex positivity, what they do think is appropriate, what they don't, and then that muddies the water in any conversation, because you can have people who are out and out feminists but have a higher threshold for sexual agency, sexual appeal as being appropriate, and you can have people who are lower on that continuum. And so that's always the challenge. And so, of course, I think that would be the one thing that you could point at and say, this is something that's completely male-created. So they're probably in their mind saying exactly what we were saying, right? Like, hey, this is what James Bond does. It's the same kind of thing. James Bond has this kind of sexy vibe to it, so we're going to do that there. And I mean, I think it certainly was more tasteful than a lot of other things, but I certainly agree that, depending on what your presence is on that sexual continuum, that you could still walk away and be like, you know what? Was that necessary? Was that something that had to happen?
Well, and I think that, I mean, and this is always kind of tricky, Grant. I've been talking to this about a few people, with this, about this with a few people.
There you go.
God damn it. Is the idea that, like, especially when female lead characters are concerned, there's this idea that when I read that, I can look at things and I can be like, oh, I can hand wave certain things because at the end of the day, it doesn't affect me the way it would affect Kayleigh or Audrey or Kerbatron or some, a woman that was reading this, and that's kind of the interesting thing. Do I think that Velvet has the potential to be an empowering character? Absolutely. Do I think that some people might find it's problematic that she's walking around naked or the gratuitous lingerie side? Absolutely. But both of those things can also exist in the same continuum.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and I would make the argument that I didn't walk away from this book feeling like Velvet was uncharacterized. I felt like I had a very good sense of her depth. I read the comic better than Toby did, so I inferred all of the things that they were trying to get me to infer about how she kept herself in shape. And what I liked was,
I saw that.
No, I'm just giving you shit.
All right.
Was just that whole like, and one of the things I found really fascinating about Volume 2 was the addition of why did she get benched in the first place?
Oh yeah,
why And it was this interesting look kind of simultaneously at super spies probably would get PTSD in certain circumstances, don't you think? And also as a method of, almost single-handedly through a few pages, giving her a remarkable amount of depth about why she still retains a lot of her skills and abilities, or why she still, maybe sought that out on some kind of subconscious level with a routine, but also didn't necessarily feel super great about.
Well, the thing I think I like
getting involved.
The thing I like the most about this story is that if you switched it and this was about a male spy, I think it would be the most boring, insipid, I've seen this before, this is lazy kind of things. Maybe not the most, but it would be up there. I would not be nearly as interested. What makes it interesting to me is the fact that I do feel like she's well written. I feel like there are depths there that have not yet been plumbed. I think that there's a lot hiding there.
See, that's interesting because I actually disagree with you. I think that if you literally replaced Velvet with a male character, the male secretary to the head of the director, and it's like, who is this? And it's like, especially if he's presented in the same way, right? Like, Velvet is presented as a relatively innocuous figure, right? She's a woman. She's dressed in a pencil skirt. She sits behind a desk. If you did the same thing of what would, quote unquote, be the same for men, thin,
would
glasses,
he be in a pencil skirt?
Put him in a pencil skirt,
totally
right? But I mean, if you use the same, because there is a trope mechanism here, right? Like the time and the like when this is happening era wise and all these things. So if you use the same visual cues as a thin, dweebish, innocuous man, and had this same plot, I'd still think it's a pretty good spy story.
I mean, but that's the thing.
Especially if he was a secretary in the 50s,
right?
60s, 70s.
Yeah. Well, 70s.
I agree with you. I guess boring is maybe too strong, but insipid, I think, runs strong. In spy novels, you have a lot of the same tropes, and I think that we may not have seen the story where he's a secretary, but we've all seen the spy that comes in out of the cold, the spy that comes out of retirement and has to go back and figure out what the great mystery is. And I don't think I would have been as interested in it. Velvet, and I think what makes her interesting to me is her experience, right? The fact that you don't normally see events play out in that way. And the fact that she can kind of get in there and mix it up, and her narrative is, the way she plays things is, I think they do a good job of kind of reveling in her womanness, in her femininity, and the fact that she knows she can go out there and she can sleep with the assistant to get the information she needs. She's comfortable in that. She doesn't think twice about it. She's comfortable in her physical ability. But the scenes with Lady Pauline and her watching this role model, and then her having the kind of callback to that when she goes to see what's her face, I can't remember her name right now, in the S&M club. That's very interesting to me. Whereas, and I think it's just because you don't see those relationships a lot portrayed. The relationships between women are something that we're, I think, in popular culture, at least in the past, it's getting a lot better now. You don't see those relationships a lot. You see the hard woman that was secretly in love with her instructor, right, the whole time, or he was her father figure, or something stupid like that you've seen 100 million times. You very rarely see a woman being trained by a woman that was just as fucking hardcore and unforgiving and awesome as they are, and I think that's kind of the scene with her and her husband. I really liked that. It was a really cool deconstruction of the normal trope, because it's in Casino Royale, man, James is hanging out with some girl, and then he's like, that's not gonna work. You're he finds out she's a double agent or whatever.
And I was absolutely thrilled with the it's not mid-series at this point, because Volume 3 will be, but anyway, the mid-Volume 2, where it basically becomes clear that the whole conflict they had was actually because her husband thought that she was the double agent.
That was actually incredibly brilliant.
And I think that's the one advantage of having I think that does speak to a plot point that you probably couldn't have pulled off with a male character in the same way.
And that's
because the whole point is she's talking about having allowed herself to experience a relationship in this certain way, especially given her commentary about the naivete of having this role model who actually had some serious baggage, and realizing that actually she is carrying some serious baggage, but then had this one person she connected with. You could tell it from the male point of view, but it probably wouldn't be as entrancing, I guess.
Well, yeah.
Feel as dynamic or as interesting, especially because she won that fight. And that's so fucking hardcore to be 30 years later, or 20, 22.
50, well, it's 15 or 17, I think.
Yeah, and just be I had to murder my husband because he was a double agent. No, actually.
No, he was.
He wasn't. He thought I was. It's that's.
And not only is that, I think that is a hard thing to pull off. It was made, to me, far, far more interesting because Velvet's a woman. Because you don't see women in that position.
Right.
And this is what makes Tara Chase good, too, right? Is that she responds to things in a different way. In a way, I like that. I don't want to see James Bond. I own the fucking Blu-ray set of James Bond. I can watch James Bond whenever the fuck I want. I can read one of 30 fucking James Bond novels, right?
You can't watch it right now.
I could leave
doing
right
a
now. I have
no.
keys. You're not stopping me.
I
You know
would
what?
stop
I'm
you.
leaving. I should have hit the
He's
mic.
he's not leaving.
I am leaving.
Nope, still not leaving.
Now we're downstairs.
Anyway. But yeah, no, I honestly have to really respect the way that this book flows. Like, everything feels incredibly natural from the point where it starts, and then every single moment after that, you're like, yeah, that's what happens next. At no point do you go like, well, that seems contrived, or like, how did that how did you know that?
Yeah, I've been impressed with that so far, because I mean, you know, even some of the best like Bond or spy stories occasionally run into that thing where you're like, and then we go into the volcano base, and you're like, what? Okay, that's cool. Like, I'm along for the ride, but
Or, you know, some like, and then he runs into exactly the right person that he needed to run into in just this circumstance, because that's what we need to move the plot along.
well, and I like that she's not invincible either. Like, she even so she has some challenges when she first gets started, right? Like, she gets hurt, she makes a couple of very transparent mistakes that make it possible for her to at least be initially followed, although she kind of gets into a routine. But even towards the end of volume 2, she makes a couple of assumptions that end up getting her a little bit into trouble. And so it's like she's incredibly competent, but she's not immortal, omniscient, you know, which tends, you know, which I think has been one of the things that, depending on who you are, is the most appealing part of the newest version of Bond.
Yeah.
Is that he's also, like, occasionally you're just like, wow, that was a big mistake.
Yeah.
And I'm interested to see how you get out of that.
Well, and I mean, whereas the new Bond kind of gets out of it through sheer kind of beating the crap out of people.
Or himself.
Well, usually a combination of both. I find it... I think what I appreciated most about this book is that I am constantly kept in suspense.
So are we.
So, Cade, there's not a lot of sound that's been coming out of that side of the room.
Sorry, I've been listening to conversations.
Yeah, you guys are
but
having a good one.
I know that you have notes in your no longer Lisa Frank notebook.
Yeah, I got a new notebook. It's not quite as good, but
it has stickers on it.
Yeah, just a couple more holographic stickers. I think it'll be up to code.
Okay,
but no, I think, like, even though Velvet makes mistakes, and you're like, yeah, maybe you shouldn't have done that. I still really like this book because it's competency porn. Like,
have you
It's
not heard
good.
that term before?
No,
Brant?
I haven't.
I never have either.
that is actually, that's like Warren Ellis's bailiwick, or to an extent Greg Rucka as well. And this is a term that I've been hearing for maybe the last year or so, that their books are competency porn. They're books about incredibly competent people going out and doing the thing that they do well.
and it's just-
Competently.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically Global Frequency in a nutshell.
Yeah.
Wolverine in a nutshell.
Yes.
Have we done Glow? Oh, man.
No, you pitched it a couple of times.
Yeah, I'm not bringing back anything ever again. I'm just gonna do back matters on all of it.
Good luck with that.
Oh, I'm going to.
I'm
I'll
sorry,
do it
but
by
you were
myself.
saying, Kayleigh.
But it's just, it's a good read because you're just like, yeah, she's going to get it. Like, she's going to figure it out, and it's just fun
Is she
to read.
though?
Yeah.
I mean,
I
she
feel
really
like she is.
gets thrown a curveball at the end of the second volume.
Yeah, but with how they've built the character, I feel like she can pull through, and it's not that sort of inevitability of, well, it's all going to work out. It's going to be boring. I'm excited to see how she makes this work.
See, I have to admit, I was on that same track until the second issue of Volume 2, when all of a sudden we had different perspective characters, and it was the guys hunting her.
Right.
And they're actually displaying competency in their narratives, even though it's not the same competency or the same degree. And all of a sudden I was like, holy shit, Brubaker, are you going to totally, like, volumes 3, or if this goes to 4, I don't know if 3 is actually going to be the last one or not. Like, is it going to become like those other people are going to, you know what I mean? Like, I felt myself on slightly shakier ground by the end of volume 2 because of some of those things, which you're right. I still don't have the impression I'm like, well, Velvet's totally going to not do it. But I certainly had a lot more like, wow, you may, like, I now believe Brubaker is actually willing to potentially not let her succeccede theoretically.
Yeah, there are stakes.
Yeah.
And so
there could be a
it's good to
surprise ending,
Well, I mean, I could definitely...
like any good movie.
I could definitely see this becoming a thing where the enemies from the second volume become... I mean, what's-his-face totally upped the stakes at the end there. Like, that's going to definitely... And, I mean, that's definitely going to change things. And I think it would be interesting to... Like, I like team-ups. I like when the bad guys become the good guys and everybody gets along and then they kick ass together. Like, that's just... It's like...
So what you're saying is that Vegeta is your favorite Dragon Ball Z character?
I mean, at the end of the Cell Saga, he's pretty cool.
Okay. Well, what was interesting for me was I came into this book going, oh, this is James Bond. And by the end of it, I was like, this isn't James Bond. This is The Prisoner. Like, there is a game being played on a completely separate level from what she thought was going on. And everything that she's been doing has been... like her down on this lowermost level, not even understanding what's happening on the levels up above. And when she gets the note from What's-His-Butt,
good old What's-His-Butt.
Yeah, good old What's-His-Butt. I can't fucking remember her name at this point. But when she gets the note at the end of volume 2, like, the game has begun or whatever, like, that is the first moment that she realizes, like, this isn't just about one mole in one intelligence operation. This is about the entire global intelligence game and what's going on above that. That she hasn't been even asking anything approaching the right questions.
Right.
The answers that she might have gotten would be meaningless because things are happening on so many different levels. And like that is very much within the bailiwick of the prisoner. This idea of him trying to figure out even what is going on so that he can start to ask the right questions. And that's...
be chased by a giant white...
Yes, and being chased by a giant weather balloon. But like that's the moment when I really, really became interested in this series. Like everything up until there is like, yeah, fun. Like Jason Bourne running around, smashing people in the face, asking them where are the drugs. But it was at that end moment when you realize that there is this whole other level. That is the moment when I first really became engaged with this work.
I mean, it was deftly done because it's the kind of thing that it's done wrong. It can totally be a turnoff. And I thought they did it. I thought they pulled it off really well.
Cade, what did you think? Because you haven't said a whole lot.
Well, I really liked it. I got the first volume with the Image Humble Bundle or whatever back when. And so when I heard that we were doing Velvet, I was happy, then I was sad, and then I was happy again. Happy the first time because I've been wanting to talk about it. Sad because I didn't think the second book was out. And then happy because the second book was out. I don't know. It's really good. I feel that she's a much better character than some we've seen in this specific genre. Or when I say genre, I'm also including novels, because we don't see a lot of these in comics. But I don't know. I really liked it. From like issue 2 or 3, I was in for the ride, and the second volume upped the stakes even better than the first one and really took it away. I loved the cars. The cars in this book were incredibly beautifully drawn, very realistic. I could pinpoint manufacturers, makes, and whatnot. And that's always incredible for me because most comics, they draw a car. They don't put detail in it. They don't put the emblems on it. And I get that for some comics that's due to trademarking. but I just feel that makes it incredibly more realistic. As far as the sex stuff you were talking about, in my opinion, it's okay to see tasteful nipple as long as it's in a very realistic setting. And I felt that this was a very realistic setting. A lot of people, I have to believe that in that situation, they wouldn't get dressed. Like, yeah, she just got done with him. If she's caught, she needs to be able to say something like, oh, I was just getting a drink of water. I'll be back to bed in a second. That kind of thing. Like, if she had got dressed and then was rooting around, like, something could look suspicious. Maybe he thought she was going to leave, like, I don't know. There could be a lot of reasons for it, and because of that, it didn't really bother me.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, ever since James Bond's Aston Martin, there's been an element of cars within the spy genre, of paying attention to them and their importance. And I think it's a cool little nod, because, I mean, of course, this is set in the 1970s when the Bond movies were a really big thing. And so it's cool that they got to play with that a little bit and put in some classic cars in that regard. Personally, I went completely over my head, but I did recognize, oh, hey, that's the James Bond car. That's cool.
Well, and that particular car is interesting in the James Bond mythos, because that was the car that stuck. Because Goldfinger is the fourth film. Dr. No from Russia with Love. Yeah. So I think it's the fourth Bond film. I could be wrong.
And she doesn't even drive that one. It's just there.
Well, but it's the James Bond character that's the one that's
the one that gets
approaching
killed.
It. Yeah. So that was the car that really, I mean, James Bond became very, very, very strongly.
That's your indication that he is James Bond.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they're so intertwined in the pop culture consciousness that when Pierce Brosnan came back to play James Bond and people found out he was going to be in a BMW, it caused somewhat of a fervor, because people were like, no, he's got to drive an Aston Martin.
Quite
and
the
then,
to-do.
What? There was a bit of a to-do, somewhat of a dust-up.
He should have driven one of the V12 Vantages.
But, well, I mean, I think...
Is this going to be a thing, Cade? Are we going to come to words?
The problem was, at that point, I think Aston Martin was still owned by Ford, and...
Yeah.
Their offerings were not great. And then when in the last Bond movie he finally got an Aston Martin, and the last Pierce Brosnan movie is awful. It's dreadful. It's fucking dreadful. I'm sorry. Die Another Day. I love James Bond.
I love that movie.
I need
so
to
bad. Like,
isn't that the one with Christmas Jones, Denise Richards?
No.
Okay, no, that's The World Is Not Enough.
Yeah, and I love that one. So I think that should speak to you how much I'm willing to forgive.
Joe, you disgust me. Brant, we're on the same page.
All right.
No,
Rosamund Pike.
No. Die Another Day was awful.
No.
It was ridiculous.
The world was going to be blown up by a white Korean guy. Here's the thing I love about Die Another Day is that I felt like it was the first time in the Brosnan era where there was a actual old school Bond henchman with what's his name having all the diamonds in his face.
Oh no, but I mean, I feel like that was just gimmicky to be gimmicky. I thought Stomper from Tomorrow Never Dies was fucking great. I mean, and it had Vincent Schiavelli in it, which is also very cool. But I fucking will watch License to Kill, and I'm like, okay, maybe that wasn't that bad.
Was that Dalton or Lazenby?
That was the last Dalton movie.
Okay.
Because, and I know I've gotten off on a little bit of a tangent here, but for those of you that cringe at the mention of Timothy Dalton, don't blame him. He did his best. He was trying to. Everybody tries to bring their own thing to Bond, and he wanted to play it hardcore, and he does a really good job of playing it hardcore, and License to Kill has Benicio del Toro in it.
Yeah?
It totally does. But, so the Aston Martin thing is very much ingrained in the James Bond mythos, which
Well, Timothy Dalton plays both that badass prince from Flash Gordon, whose name I can't remember, and motherfucking Rassilon. So I have no hard feelings towards Timothy Dalton.
And the owner of the supermarket in Hot Fuzz.
Yes, which is a brilliant role from him.
Yes, it is.
And everybody's mind is always blown when you tell them that the, like, mentally deficient clerk boy from Hot Fuzz is the Hound in Game of Thrones.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Because you like
Yarp.
Narp. So do we have anything else to say about Velvet proper? We haven't really talked about the art at all.
Oh, it's so pretty.
It's great.
And
the colors are fantastic. I'm going to pull a charge and just talk about the colors because they're beautiful. They look like paint strokes, and
I honestly think
them.
the colors are the best part.
Yeah, they're just great. And it does such a really I lost that sentence. Ignore that one. It does such a fantastic job of painting the atmosphere of this world that she lives in and making it feel dark and smoky and secretive, and I just really love that about this.
Well, it's good at being dark without being drab, because of course there are those scenes that are brilliantly lit up, and there's lots of spotlighting that goes on. Mm-hmm. So it works in that dimension, and something that we have a big problem with a lot, I think, is those comics where everything's lit like it's on a stage, like everything's at the same brightness level. Nothing is cloaked in shadow, like there aren't tones, there aren't light reflections on anything. And this does a good job of having the characters lit up, but having them be in darkness and have it not feel like there are big freaking floodlights everywhere or else the camera's not going to pick up anything. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I love her character design. I think my only does it for me.
What did Toby say? Nits to pick was that I feel like at times, and it's not all the time. It's just like kind of shows up very rarely. It's not as that Velvet is not drawn looking in her face. She doesn't look as old as she does most of the time, all the time. Like I feel like there are some panels and stuff where it looks like she's her younger self with the white streak versus having the kind of a little bit of the more age to her that they I feel like is very well and intentionally done in a lot of the close-ups to her face. And it only happened like twice that I can think of where it was just kind of like, that's weird. Her face looks like smoother and younger, even though this is clearly the older Velvet. And, I mean, who knows when that happened, right? Between inking, coloring, printing. Like, it's such a small thing. It just kind of jumped out at me at the time.
Sure. Anything else that we want to say, or are we ready to move on to recommendations?
I think we're good for recommendations.
I feel like there was something I wanted to say more. I agree with Brant. And there was also one part of this that I found. Oh, well, we have a question, too.
Oh, yes, questions.
Tony wants to know. I will read this verbatim from Facebook. True, truthy, or false, Ed Brubaker is the most consistent and reliable comic book writer of high quality over the last 10 to 15 years. I will say that while he has been consistent, he's far from the only one. I think Greg Rucka has been great. I think Mark Waid has really been...
Warren Ellis.
Relatively
consistent.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that you really have to limit yourself to a very specific...
Oh, sure.
Like, within very specific boundaries. Because there's certain people like Stan Sakai who have just been churning out the same product for 20 fucking years at a consistently brilliant level, just going unrecognized.
Sure. Well, and then, I mean, and then there are some people who are not necessarily consistent in a sense, but that's because what they're trying to do is be different and like change things a lot. And I'm actually thinking of specifically Dan Slott. Like, he's tried a lot of different things in his run on Spider-Man, but that's part of what he's trying to do, and so his consistency is that he's trying to be inconsistent. Not all the way. I mean, I feel like it's pretty easy to pick up a Slott story and know you're reading a Slott. But.
And I think that's the thing, is that consistency is boring in a sense. Like, it's the same thing. And if you try different things, if you attempt to improve, sometimes you're going to stumble, sometimes you're going to fail.
Yeah.
You know, I think that is a lot of people's problems with Grant Morrison, is that Morrison is trying to get to something very deep. And sometimes he gets there and you're like, that was awesome, Grant. And sometimes he just goes off into outer fucking space. And you're like, I have no idea what you're talking about, Grant.
I think the other problem there has everything to do with the whether it's a persona or his actual personality of who he presents to the universe at large when he talks about the things that he's trying to do.
Sure, and maybe Grant Morrison isn't necessarily the best example. I think Warren Ellis might even be a better one, because he definitely went through an experimental phase where he was just trying lots of different things, where he's like, I have this idea, I'm going to put off this one-off story. That worked or that didn't work. I'm moving on to the next thing, so I don't really care.
Yeah. Sorry.
Well,
this was Tony who asked this?
Yes.
Yeah.
You'll get no straight up and down answers out of us, Tony. It'll be all
I think that's the point, though.
guarded statements and
I mean, I
balanced.
nuanced
Balanced. That's right. Nuance.
I thought Brubaker's Daredevil run was, well, what I read of it was okay. I didn't think, I definitely like Brubaker more where he's doing his more crime.
I'm trying to think of what else. So he did Daredevil, Captain America.
He did, yeah.
He did Gotham Central.
Yeah, he did Gotham.
He had a short run on Iron Fist with Matt Fraction.
Uh-huh.
And I wanted to also say, Warren Ellis found a really great outlet for his experimental side. It was called Avatar, and it was all the stuff that I didn't want to read from him.
Yep.
Which, I mean, I will make that a personal thing and not a thing. Like, the man has diarrhea of the brain, you know? Like, he can just crank it out. And, I never cared for his gravel stuff. Like, me and Brant have talked about this before.
That's Ennis, not Ellis.
No, it's
Yes,
Ellis.
it's Ellis.
It's Warren Ellis.
It is.
Oh,
I
I'm not
promise
thinking
you.
of Gravel. I'm thinking of, because all the Avatar stuff looks the same. I'm thinking
Yeah,
of
Ennis
with a
has
character
got,
who looks very similar.
Yeah. So, I think there's plenty of really consistent, I mean, I can count on one hand the amount of things that Mark Waid has done that I haven't, really, truly thought were top notch. I can probably do it on a few fingers, actually.
Isn't one hand only a few fingers?
Well, it's 5. I count a few between as more than 2, but less than 5. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, really, who gets to define how many fingers a hand has? That is just human-centric war garble. Something.
Yeah, well, bargain garbable. But yeah, I have no answer. I think Brubaker's okay, but everybody's got misses. I think that there are plenty of other.
Well, there are clearly
consistent-
types of stories that either he's more passionate about or
Yeah, absolutely.
he resonates as a writer on better. I mean, I liked a lot of the stuff he did on Captain America, but I agree, Daredevil for me, by the time he had gotten on it, I was just kind of like, okay.
We actually got one more listener question that literally just came in this exact minute. So I'm going to throw it out there, even though I'm not quite sure what it's referring to, which is it true that it's actually the prequel for Like a Velvet Glove Cast in Iron?
Which is a Daniel Clowes book, so I'm going to say no.
Yeah. I know who
Also-
Daniel Clowes is.
Yeah. Who asked that? Because shame on you.
That was Walter. Shame on you, Walter. I don't know why I'm shaming you. I haven't read it. I don't care much for Daniel Clowes' work, but that's a personal problem.
Boy, is it.
Yeah.
Personal problem or personal preference?
One of those
I'm
things.
not
I don't
a
think
big
Toby has
Clowes
much of a
fan
problem with it.
outside of Ghost World, which I think has kind of a cultural importance, but I find him to be kind of heavy-handed.
Yeah.
Well, he does write about hands made of iron.
He does, and velvet gloves.
Well, it's just
But
when you drop them, they make a pleasing thud-like sound.
It's true, unless you drop them on metal grating, in which case they make a really clangy sound, and then there's
It's kind of muffled. I don't know.
yeah, well, but it resonates and
Just uncomfortable. Set your
it's
teeth on
very
edge.
yeah.
So,
Yes.
Brant,
You can't start with me
why not?
because I pitched the last book.
I'm gonna start because I have a reader pick from one of our
Patreon.
Patreons.
Patron
Supporter
pitches.
levels.
Patrons.
Relief pitcher level patrons.
Yes, exactly.
Ba-dum-bum.
So,
All right, well, let's start with Brandon Hill's pitch.
we're going to pick, and Brandon Hill has charged me with pitching Understanding Comics by Scott McCloud, which I think is kind of essential. I think it's essential reading. I think that Scott McCloud wrote Zot in the 80s, which was groundbreaking of its time, and then he took all this kind of knowledge and he put it into this book called Understanding Comics, which is a journey through understanding comics as a medium. And it gets into topics such as the way our brain perceives lines and turn them into faces. He talks about the gutter and how the gutter makes time pass and how you, the reader, interact with the gutter.
It is the best, simplest deconstruction of how comic books work on a fundamental level.
And I think it still stands as probably the best. I will say one of the best, if not the best. And I think it's a very important work to what we do. It's an inspiration to me.
So Brandon's proposal is we read the seminal textbook of comic analysis and then argue about it.
Well, and no, that's Watchmen Part 2.
Well, no, that's reinventing comics.
Yeah, right. I will say this. This is something I've wanted to do a back matter on. So regardless of whether or not we vote on it, I will definitely talk about it because I wanted to do a back matter on it for quite some time.
And I think it would make a great back matter topic.
Yeah. But, so yeah. And then I'll just go because I'm already talking.
Well, how about I go and then we'll come back and end with you?
Okay, that makes sense.
So I'm going to repitch a book that I pitched once before. I am pitching Finder by Carla Speed McNeil, volumes 1 and 2. And I'm going to cheat a little bit because it's a very hard book to describe. So I'm just going to read the Wikipedia description of it and then fill in a detail.
Yawn. No, I'm just kidding.
So the series is set in a vastly depopulated, far future Earth where numerous hunter-gatherer cultures, some human and some not, surround densely overpopulated dome city-states of recognizably modern urbanites functioning at a high technological level. Our own civilization and its considerably more advanced successors are lost to prehistory, save for a few 20th century pop cultural artifacts conveniently recovered by well-paid psychics. And so this is kind of like a weird post-apocalyptic series where the apocalypse is like relegated to the depths of history and civilization has moved beyond that. And it stars this guy named Jaeger going to go visit a family of his in one of these dome cities. Why are you laughing at me so hard, Brant?
I can't help it. I'm sorry. You just were like, it's so hard to describe. Let me read this really obtuse set of paragraphs, and then let me explain them to you. Clearly, it wasn't that hard for you to describe, or for the person who wrote the Wikipedia article.
Trust me, I would have been going in circles for 5 minutes trying to distill it down into essentially that.
No, I understand. I'm sorry. It just tickled me pink, and I apologize. I did not mean to steal your
part of the point is that a big attraction of this series is the setting, which is incredibly detailed, very rich and interesting with lots of different cultures and a world that feels kind of realistic. And I really enjoyed this series, and I think that there is a lot to talk about.
Absolutely.
And I love the art.
What else is Carla Speed McNeil writing?
She recently did a book called Bad Houses that I pitched. I'm not sure what else she's done. I mean, her main work has kind of been this series and then kind of bits and pieces around that as far as I'm aware. But I think it's a lot of fun, and it stars a guy who's essentially Wolverine. If that makes any difference to your decision whether or not you might want to vote for it. So, that's Finder. Brent?
Speaking of Warren Ellis, I wanted to pitch Moon Knight, 2014, Volume 1.
Yay!
By Ellis and Declan Shalvey.
Shalvey. He's Scottish, I think. I pitched this like a couple of months ago, and I said Shavely, which is completely wrong.
Yeah, a couple of letters there in different order. So
yes.
Yeah. You know, new paradigm for the character, new look for the character. I don't know that I was here for the pitch, or if I was, I kind of blanked it, but I happened upon some of the art, actually, accidentally, while I was reading Velvet and doing something or looking something up, and I was just like, what is that? Oh my gosh, that's this? It was written by who? I want to read that. and thus I pitch it to you.
Hooray!
Moon Knight, schizophrenic hero of... Schizophrenic?
He's
No.
actually not.
Well, not anymore.
Not anymore. He was
Multiple
briefly
personalities.
Well,
MPD.
yeah, not schizophrenic, MPD, yeah.
Although MPD, I don't think is actually that's not a thing.
Right, it's...
According to medical texts,
Identity
it is.
According to the
disassociated.
It's identity
DSM-4.
Yeah,
Identity
I could call my wife
dissociative
and ask,
disorder.
that being her now specialty and profession, but hopefully she doesn't listen to the podcast and then shame me at home for not knowing exactly how to describe a mental condition.
The
Indeed.
phenomenon of having more than one personality occupy the same...
Brain
Yes.
pan. So yeah, anyway, apparently not that anymore, vigilante in white by night, Mark
Pelagian.
Spector by day,
Regular guy in white by day?
regular white guy
He
by
really
day.
doesn't seem like he's ever just a regular guy.
Yeah, I think the one thing that's been consistent of all interpretations of Mark Spector is he's not a normal person.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, interesting art. Warren Ellis is always a treat, so to speak, depending on your feeling for him. So that's my pitch.
Cool. Kayleigh?
I'm going to be pitching Rachel Rising by Terry Moore, which is about a girl named Rachel.
Is she rising?
Well, she wakes up in a shallow grave and has to dig herself out.
Correct
would
me if
be
I'm wrong. Isn't this the
unfortunate.
second zombie book in a week that you've pitched?
You know what? I've had enough of your sass. Doesn't
No
matter
one
how
will
many
ever have
zombie
had
books.
enough of my sass. My sass is
Shouldn't
eternal.
it be called Rachel Surmising because she's trying to figure out why she ended up in the shallow grave?
God.
I hate you.
I also hate you.
Done.
But yeah, she.
Fuck you,
she
I'm
wakes
out!
up-
Drop mic.
She wakes up. She realizes that she's dead, and goes around trying to find out who killed her. And other stuff happens too. And it's good. And
Does she make bread? Does that bread rise?
no,
Damn it.
it's
Bru-
flat. It's flat bread. I wish you'd respect her culture.
Sorry.
Wow, this got strangely heated.
Anything else that you want to say about the book?
Yeah, it's a good one.
It's a good.
It's a good.
Is a good.
Cade?
So I too am bringing a zombie book as part of my throwback recommendations. Taking a book we have talked about in the past and adding more of the series to it. We have once talked about Revival, and I said it would be neat to talk about it again after more was out because we had only talked about the first trade. And they're now on the 6th trade, but the 5th one came out a couple months ago.
Okay.
So I wanted to kind of go back and see what's happened since we last went down that rabbit hole. So this is a book about one day the dead come back to life, but not like in most zombie ways. They still live with the living, and so it's the living and the recently unliving having to coexist together. And in the first book, there was a murder that needed to be solved, and so it was kind of a detective story. And then it kind of spiraled out from there.
Can the recently deceased be killed?
Yes.
Okay. I wasn't here for that, so I'm just trying to wrap my head around the concept.
It's a little bit weird.
Yeah.
There
Sounds
are
like it.
rules, and there are
Okay.
reasons why certain people come back from the dead and others don't.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
It's interesting. We didn't really like the first book,
Some of us.
but all of us had said that it'd be interesting to see where it goes. So now I'm interested to see where it went.
Cool. Joseph?
Squirrel Girl. That's what I'm bringing this week.
The unbeatable
The
squirrel
Unbeatable
girl?
Squirrel Girl.
Squawgwa?
Squawagwa. The Unbeatable Squirrel Girl, which is about the adventures of Squirrel Girl from the Great Lakes Adventures.
Correct me if I'm
Adventures.
wrong, but didn't issue 6 of this just come out?
It did, and the trade will have the first 5, which is what I'm pitching.
Nice.
And it's about a girl that can talk to squirrels. And she's awesome. This is something else Carbotron asked me to pick. But I'm super interested in to read it as well. I'd love to, because I hear nothing but good things about it. So the first arc is the first 4 issues, wherein Squirrel Girl faces off against everybody's favorite world-eating baddie, Galactus.
And also Kraven the Hunter.
And also, well, where else would he be?
Dead?
Well, it's silly.
Oh,
it's the Marvel
he's
universe.
come back at least once.
I know.
He's come back several
in
times.
the seminal Scarlet Spider series.
Kraven's Last Hunt is what I was thinking of, so just shut your mouth, sir.
Yeah. Anyway.
God, I should pitch that one of these days. Oh, next week. That's what I'm going to do. Somebody remind me next week that I'm going to pitch Kraven's Last Hunt. But Unbeatable Squirrel Girl this week. First 5 issues. Yeah.
Cool.
Short and sweet and to the point.
God. Does that mean that I have to vote now?
Yeah.
Damn it.
You do the voting.
I'm incredibly torn. I really want to talk about Squirrel Girl, but I also really want to talk about Moon Knight.
Moon Knight.
Oh, brain no worky.
You don't want to pick a zombie book?
I don't. I hate zombies.
Yeah, I do too.
God damn it. I'm going to vote for Moon Knight because it's already been pitched once, whereas Squirrel Girl has not previously been pitched. And I am in favor of redemption picks because our reading list at this point, out of 120 episodes that we've done, has like 419 entries on it. So there's a lot of books that we have pitched and not talked about. We got to get that number down.
I'm just going to go back, make a list of all the things I've pitched that haven't been picked, and just recommend them all again. And then in 400, in another
400 episodes, we'll be back. We'll be back here.
Another 100 episodes, I'll be back here again.
So that is my vote. I am voting for Moon Knight. Brant?
I'm sorry, Brandon. I can't do it.
It's okay, Brant. It's like I said, we will have a back matter on it soon.
Because there are things I want to talk about that book. But
Well, and back matter has kind of been on hiatus lately because we've been trying to set up a secondary recording situation so that we can be a little bit freer, and we just had a major breakthrough on that front. So back matter will be
were there lab
returning.
coats, speakers, and smoke?
No,
Yes.
there were credit cards.
We have synthesized pure opinion, and now we will rain it down on everybody.
Dear
Of course,
God.
they will be my opinions.
Get to the bunkers. This is how the Fallout series begins.
It is.
Can't vote for myself.
Sorry.
Zombies. Gotta love them.
I don't think Rachel really counts as.
Yeah, no, my understanding of that book is she's not zombie.
Yeah.
She's more...
She's just dead.
She's just,
She's just dead. There's a difference.
She doesn't have any dialogue. She just kind of sits around. It's like Weekend at Bernie's, but with a girl named Rachel.
Every issue is 22 pages of her slowly decomposing.
Yeah.
Not
and
moving.
two of her, and Jonathan Silverman and whoever else was in that first movie trying to...
Weekend at Bernie's.
Yeah.
You're making Weekend at Bernie's references.
Oh, I totally
reference.
am.
Really?
I am.
I am very disappointed.
Lots
in
of
you.
people are because of Bernie Sanders. Go Bernie Sanders. Anyway, I don't know why I said that. Just because.
I've had dinner with him before.
Really? We'll have to talk about that off the air.
Yeah.
Rachel Rising, I think.
Okay. Kayleigh?
Kayleigh's doing a little dance.
A little Kayleigh dance.
I'm gonna go. I want to talk about Squirrel Girl, but I've been wanting to talk about Moon Knight for a while, so that's the one I'm going for.
Cool. Moon Knigget.
Cade?
Rachel Rising.
I'm gonna vote for Moon Knight.
All right.
I mean, if it's any consolation,
Wow, Joe, you broke the trend. Usually whoever has to break the tie usually is like kind of as equivocating. Like,
No, I don't
maybe
even-
I could and I really want to. It's like clearly the people who've been coached on like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. Well, A is really appealing, but B could be right. You're the guy who's like, fuck that noise, it's this.
Yeah. I will say this. I have no desire to go back and revisit the book that
Revival.
No,
yeah.
that's fine.
And I did not care for it at all. The premise, I just bored, and the whole "who killed me" thing is kind of played out for me right now too. It was always going to be Moon Knight. As soon as Brant pitched it, I was like, yeah, that's probably what I'm going to vote for.
All right. Well,
So-
Brant is 2-0 for pitches in the last 2 weeks.
Woot!
Go Brant. So
Listen next time as I attempt the hat trick.
next time we are going to be reading Moon Knight Volume 1 by Warren Ellis, but not Moon Knight Volume 2 by Brian Wood. We're just reading the Ellis 6 issues.
I think that makes sense. And also not Moon Knight Volume 1 by
Bendis?
No, before that.
Stephen Platt.
I honestly
way
do
fucking
not
back.
know.
No. The crime fiction guy who took Houston. I think. Whatever. Doesn't matter. I was just trying to make a joke and I didn't even know what I was talking about. Stop it.
Also, Brian May has said it's dissociative identity disorder.
Thank you, Brian May.
Yeah, I thought it was DID.
Thank you for being
I was
our
under the
own
impression that
personal
there was
oracle,
some
Brian May.
question as to whether or not it was an actual disorder or like a symptom of something else. But what do I know? Nothing.
It's a
Yeah, I've been
symptom
telling
of
you
your
that for
brain
years.
being messed up.
Indeed.
Ooh, technical jargon.
And on that note, dear listeners, it is time for us to once again say goodbye.
We love you.
Cue the Mr. Rogers
It's
music.
time to say fuckity bye.
Fuckity bye, everybody.
Fuckity bye, everybody.
Thank you for listening to Me From the Gutters. I hope our recommendations have inspired you to go out and find some new comics you'll enjoy. Join us next time for a discussion of our selected title, but like every week, we encourage you to read all of the recommended books. In the meantime, please leave us an iTunes review. It really does help new listeners find the show. You can also like us on Facebook, subscribe to our YouTube, and follow us on Twitter at ViewFRTHGutters. Feel free to email us at contact@viewfromthegutters.com. Please send us any questions, comments, or recommendations you might have. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel as we post new videos every week. And thanks again for listening. And as always, keep reading.